joining me now is Deputy Executive Director of the Institute of Public Affairs, Daniel Wild. Daniel, we know Labor's Future Made in Australia agenda is just its very latest boondoggle. Even the OECD suspects it will be a field day for lobbyists. We know that governments are notoriously bad at picking winners. Is the OECD on the money here?
Well, Caroline, Future Made in Australia is really a future made in marginal Labor seats because this is what it's all about. As you know, it's about politics, not economics, and taxpayers are going to be fleeced for no meaningful outcome to our society. We can't have a future made in Australia under the policy of net zero. Net zero is responsible for skyrocketing energy prices, which is offshoring our manufacturing, offshoring our heavy industry. And we know that the number one winner from policies of net zero is not Australia, it's China. China is the major manufacturer and exporter of wind turbines and solar panels. Australia doesn't get any value from the exports of that, and it's about China reorientating global economic supply chains around it. So this is a very short-sighted, myopic policy that is clearly not in our national interest.
No, it's not. And still on dumb ideas or dumb Labor ideas which hamper productivity. And Robert Gottliebsen had an excellent piece in The Australian on Labor's recent IR changes and the ability they give unions essentially to strangle productivity within family businesses. What is this reform and what are the consequences likely for business?
Well, Gottliebsen's hit the nail on the head, and he's been discussing this important issue now for some time. And look, in essence, it would allow unfettered entry of unions and union delegates into small business work sites across Australia. It's on top of the effective outlawing of casual work, which is foundational to small businesses across the country. And I think it builds on this broader ideological agenda of Labor and the left, which is anti-small business, is anti-family business, which is the engine room of the economy. But it's also foundational to the Australian way of life. You know, small business is about hard work, independence, risk-taking, reward for effort, all of those values that we should encourage in our society. And it further shows, Caroline, that Labor is really now the party of big business, because big business will be the main beneficiaries of these changes because it will have less competition from small business. So we know that small and family enterprises cannot absorb the costs of these industrial relation changes in the same way that big businesses can. And of course, it comes on the back of the COVID lockdowns, which hammered small business. It helped big business. And so this is just another step in the wrong direction.
Absolutely, and small businesses can't have a full compliance department to deal with all these things, and that's where you see that competition evaporate. But still on the economy, and concerns continue for both inflation and a potential for the employment rate to surge. Inflation figures come down at the end of the month, but I feel like we're being softened up for a bit more bad economic news.
Well, I think you're right, Caroline. Unfortunately, 6 months ago, we were talking about the next move of interest rates was more likely to be down than up. Now, all the talk is it's going to be up and not down, and that's because of two key factors. One is out-of-control government spending at the federal and state level. Just look at Queensland, $1,000 subsidies for energy bills. Well, that's going to get pumped back into the economy, $300 from the federal government. We've also got this problem, Caroline, which is this mass migration, unplanned mass migration, which is pumping demand into the economy at the same time as our supply is going backwards. Productivity growth is going backwards in this country. So we're less able to generate wealth, we're less able to generate prosperity, at the same time as we've had an unprecedented surge to mass migration, over 1 million net migrants over the last 2 years, by far the biggest expansion in the history of our nation's population. So these are causing surging prices and inflation. It's why Australians are feeling all of the pain that they are at the checkout.
And Daniel, is it a question of does this federal government have the ticker or not have the ticker to make the big decisions which need to be made?
No, they don't. They've shown no inclination to deal with the big problems. Look, on migration, I know the government's been saying they're going to be cutting numbers, but I'll believe it when I see it. They haven't really taken on these issues in any meaningful way. And that's because fundamentally the only economic plan of this government is to grow the economy by growing the population. Now, of course, if you bring more people into a nation, the economy will get bigger. You've got a bigger market, more people spending money. But the slice of the pie that everybody gets is going backwards. We've had 5 consecutive quarters of negative per capita economic growth. So this mass migration policy is making Australians poorer.
And the minute they reduce migration, that aggregate GDP figure will come down along with it. So, you know, they say that's something they're going to do, but whether ultimately they want to see aggregate GDP come down or not is a totally different question. Now on to the self-evident, and Labor, Energy and Resources ministers across the country are now trying to make the case for continued gas supply. Their narrative until recently has been to totally demonise gas, but I suppose the reality's finally set in.
Well, that's right, Caroline. I'd make one exception to that, which is I think Madeleine King, in all fairness, the Federal Resources Minister, has been saying from day dot of this government that we need more gas into the market, because renewables can't get the job done. It shows that net zero does not work. It's further evidence of that. We've just seen Twiggy Forrest give up on the government subsidised hydrogen. So it builds on a series of problems. Clearly, those clear thinkers like Madeleine King have been rolled in cabinet by Chris Bowen and those from the left of the party. And it gets to this much bigger issue, which is the short-sighted policy at the state and federal level. Of course, we need baseload power. We need coal and we need gas into the system. We need it in there quick. Prices are going up dramatically. We've had AEMO warning of blackouts this summer. I mean, can you believe it? In a country like Australia, an abundance of coal, an abundance of gas, an abundance of uranium, we're talking about load shedding and blackouts over summer. That just goes to the monumental policy failures that we've seen in this country over recent years.
Yeah, you're absolutely right there. Bang on. Now, I've only got about a minute left for you, but protesters at UWA's Curtin University have got their knickers in a knot because the university's told them they can't use From the River to the Sea chant during their protest. Daniel, how on earth will they ever survive?
Well, that's right. I mean, you're in Perth, Caroline, and I think, WA has probably been a bit more sensible on this issue than on the eastern seaboard. And I think, good on the university for finally cracking down on this. I'm not holding my breath for anything from the University of Sydney or the University of Melbourne. Look, of course, people have the right to, voice their opinion and to protest, but you don't have the right to blockade. You don't have the right to set up encampments. We know university students don't want to go to campus because they don't feel it's an environment where they can study and get ahead. And I just don't understand for the life of me, why are governments funding this? All funding to universities that are allowing these kind of protests to take place should stop until these university vice-chancellors finally get with the program and understand that universities should be there for the pursuit of academic excellence, not this divisive rhetoric from a handful of students.
Absolutely. Thank you for your insights, Daniel Wild.